We're going to go ahead and get going here. So I just want to say hi. I'm seeing everybody popping in into our Zoom. We welcome everyone. I love seeing all these wonderful faces. This is amazing. It's wonderful and awesome. Welcome to the third annual 21-day reset, everybody. My name is Jessica Frank, and I'm the Biological Medicine Program Director at the Marion Institute. For the past 30 years, the Marion Institute has championed health, nutrition, and well-being from the individual level all the way up to our broader communities in the form of education, policy, programming, and outreach. And today we are very excited to bring you the kickoff event for the 21-day reset with biological medicine physician, Dr. Dickson Thom. The 21-day reset, as you may well know, is a series of curated emails that are chock full of healthy tips and important practical information that you can use throughout the year. So as you receive these emails in the coming days, each morning, rather than trying to incorporate them all at once, read through each one, see which ones resonate with you and your lifestyle, and then pepper them throughout the year, all throughout 2025. So a few announcements in housekeeping. We are going to be recording this event, and we'll actually send out the recording later on, but please keep your mics muted for the first half of the event for Dr. Thom's presentation. And then afterwards, when Dr. Thom's done presenting, we'll have a second half and we'll be opening it up to a moderated Q&A. So in the meantime, open your chat function if you know where chat is in your Zoom, and tell us, first of all, where you're joining us from. We'd love to see where you're joining us from. But in the chat, if you think of a question during the presentation, drop it into the chat and we'll get to it in the second half of the presentation. So that's how that's going to work. So we'll also be sending out a packet of resources at the end of the 21-day reset, and that'll also include another link to this recording. But if you want to go ahead and look at it in the next few days, it'll be up on our YouTube channel, which is Marion Institute TV. All right. I also want to thank our generous sponsors for the 21-day reset, starting with South Coast Health right here in Massachusetts, Keystone Total Health and Dr. Martin Hart, who's over in Columbia, Tennessee, and Catherine Grace at Blue Salon, who's down the road in Marion, Massachusetts. And we'll be dropping their links into the chat as well, so you can please go and check them out. Also, make sure you're getting our emails, which you are. Follow us on socials, which hopefully you do, and share the reset far and wide. So it is amazing. All right, so about today's guest, Dr. Dickson Thom, joining us from sunny Arizona, no doubt, among our foremost practitioners and educators of biological medicine in North America today. He's the author of several books, including Begin Again, Trauma, Disease, and Healing with the Brain Protocol in Biological Medicine. And he has more than 45 years of clinical practice helping thousands of patients overcome chronic illness. And he is championing the biological medicine and 21-day reset practices and tips today. So please welcome Dr. Dickson Thom. So I will hand it over to him.
All right, Jess. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining and being willing to participate in, the 21 days. So what we're going to do in the next 30, 40 minutes is give you the overview of the entire 21 days. And the entire 21 days actually comes from something that I've been doing in my practice for almost the last 35 years now. Where we basically, I was looking at people's health, and as a physician, you always wonder, what does a patient really need in order to get better, to feel better, to improve their quality of life, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm happy to say that what I've done over all these years is basically, encourage these natural laws that all 8 billion people on the planet are doing every day, whether they realize it or not, or should be doing every day, whether they realize it or not, because it's the aspects of how we are able to support our natural physiology. So our goal is to basically remind you that what you do on an everyday basis will actually allow you to maintain and live a life of optimal performance. And people use the word wellness and healthy and all that, but since I deal with all ages, from literally from birth to 99, and everywhere in between. You know, people have different senses. And so whether I'm dealing with an autistic child or somebody who has Alzheimer's at the other end of life, you know, these things that the 21 day reset will talk about will actually encourage people and can help people. So it's not so much about what do you, as a physician, what do I give you to take? It's more about what do I educate you to be able to do for yourself? Because the reality is that you see a doctor, you know, on occasion, a few times a year, maybe once a year. They may do some blood tests and that kind of thing. It's a very minimal time in the entire length of time. So, what I found with my patient population is the people who do the best and indeed will have an optimal performance, to allow them to have optimal performance, are people who do it on their own. So I coined this word many years ago. People will use different words. I call them basic treatment guidelines. You can call them basic guidelines. But in the reality, what they are simply natural laws. Natural laws that, as you look back through the 310,000 years that humans have been on this planet, things that they have had to do in order to survive to this day and will be as we move forward. So we're going to call it natural laws to live by. And as such, then natural laws they're not treating disease. I don't treat disease. In fact, somebody says, you know, can you treat XYZ? And I said, actually, I don't treat that. What I do is I treat patients who have that. And by doing that, where we're specifically looking at, or what are the types of things that your physiology is out of balance. So when we look at natural laws, we're basically doing things which will support your body's own metabolic processes through obviously not just these. We have 12 different organ systems. I've listed just the digestive system, the kidney, the skin, the liver, the lungs, and the nervous system. And you see from the picture there, you see, you know, there's tens of thousands, if not millions, of reactions that are happening every instant that we're alive and breathing. And so these 12 organ systems that we have to work in conjunction with each other. And the natural laws are basically supporting what we are calling our basic human needs. Maslow, you know, has written about this, is probably one of the best known authors about that. And we see this upside down triangle. So on the very bottom are basic human needs. And that's really what we're talking about. That's what the 21 day reset is going to be talking about. These are the basic needs that you will need to do every day, no matter what else is going on in your life. And so whether it's breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, and balance, homeostasis, dynamic equilibrium, they're basic physiologic needs that if you don't supply on an everyday basis, first of all, you won't have quality of life. And depending on which of those you don't have, we know that probably you're well aware that the first one, that if you don't have a basic need of, called oxygen, you won't be here for very long. It's, you know, if one was to cover your nose and mouth and you weren't able to breathe, you probably would leave us within 5 or 6 minutes of life. So it's a basic need that we all have, but there's different components of the 21 day reset that we'll ultimately end up talking about. And there's some variation in the you know, in the 21 day reset. There's some variation in the natural laws
Yeah.
because they basically are looking at they involve in where you were born in the world, you know, where you are, your culture, for what's going on, the you know, how do we meet the basic needs? The choice of foods that you eat are often culturally related, and failure to meet these needs will definitely change this dynamic equilibrium that goes on within these 12 different organ systems. So we need to look at both the internal stimuli. We need to look at the external stimuli, the world in which we live, which is unfortunately, as we speak, is in a great deal of disarray, from ice and snow in the east to incredible fires in the west, and everything else in between. So all these needs are obviously interrelated. This is the overall summary that we'll touch on briefly, and the 21 day reset. As Jess said, you'll be getting information on a daily basis, and you can read through it. Some of them Ultimately, you're one way or the other, you're doing them all. You probably don't realize that you're doing them, but in order to have a higher quality, you will be. So we'll go over sunshine, laughter, breathing, water, movement, different types of water treatments, grounding. Nebulizer definition by definition isn't really a a basic need, but it sure improves people's quality of life. Sleep hygiene, different types of food things that we'll talk about, and perhaps different types of support nutraceutical wise. So I live, as Jess said, I live in Arizona, so we have over 300 days of sunshine, including today, as we do virtually every day in this part of the world. So it's pretty easy, and people living where I am, to get out and enjoy the sun. It doesn't really have to even be sunny, however, that the importance of getting outside, barring a snowstorm or barring, somebody unfortunately on the West Coast right now where the smoke is so horrific that the air quality is so poor, one would suggest don't go outside. But generally speaking, the goal is to get outside as much as possible. Many people are familiar with seasonal affective disorder, which tends to be more, I'll say, in the northern inclines, and I don't very often, to be honest with you, see it in this part of the world in my patient population. First of all, we don't change our clocks, which is a positive. And we don't get rain very often. We don't get clouds very often. So we don't have overcast very much. So people definitely have the ability to get out. So wherever you live, no matter where you are, the goal is to basically to enjoy the sun. What's interesting about this aspect that, people think, is that a basic need? And it actually is, because if you look at all the blue zones in the world where people are centenarians and live the oldest, one of the things that is common to those particular areas of the world is that the people living there always did something. There was often community. There was often something that they did for fun that wasn't about just survival. It wasn't just about, meeting with family and friends and, that kind of stuff for what's going on. And when I asked patients over time, how they did over a period of time with instituting, the natural laws, this is always the one that seems to stump people the most, which is really a sad state to say. You don't know what you do to relax, to have fun that's different from everyday routine. But anyway, we do encourage you, whatever it is, however you do it, that you want to do something, whether you have a girls' weekend or whether you're out with your family or whether you're reading a comic book or watching a comedy on television, do something that's totally a change of pace and helpful. We said a minute ago that breathing is obviously incredibly, it's essential. And in fact, it's the one thing that if you don't do, well, unfortunately, we will leave this form the quickest, more so than any other basic need that's going on. This is one of the physiologic processes that is an unconscious reaction. Since we started this, I'm pretty sure nobody thought about the idea of actually taking a breath, but yet you're breathing most part about 16 times a minute without thinking about it. What we're asking people to do in the 21-day reset is to change that and to actually make it a conscious thought throughout the day. Uh, by daily consciousness, we know that, at the turn of the last century in 1900, people only used to breathe 5 or 6 times a minute. And one of the reasons is that we have lost about 25% of our ability to produce energy, ATP, through our mitochondria, through a whole number of reasons. Ultimately, that's going on. So daily conscious breathing is something that I encourage people to put into their life on a very regular basis. This is an example of, taking deep breathing. You can do, you don't have to necessarily do a yoga pose. You can basically do wherever you are. If you're sitting at a stoplight, if you're standing in line at the grocery store, you can basically, consciously change from just unconscious breathing to deep breathing. And the more you do that, the more you have the ability to train your brain to do it, not to have to breathe 16 times, 18 times a minute, but rather to breathe 5 or 6 times a minute. when you do that, what you're doing is you're, of course, filling your entire lungs. You're moving your diaphragm. You're supporting your liver. You're supporting so many different organs, and there are many different techniques. There's many different techniques of doing that. There are some forms of breathing that people can't do. It just doesn't feel right, or they feel that they're missing something, which interestingly is a sign that there's an underlying physiologic imbalance. So there's not one type fits all. In fact, that there's multiple opportunities that are possible. So that if you're looking to improve your sleep, for that. If you have anxiety, there's for that. If you're for relaxation, there's a deep breathing. So there's alternate types of nostril breathing, but whether you hold your breath, whether you exhale, hold, and I mean, there's just a whole variety of different types of things that are going on. So the goal is to learn something that is incredibly effective for you individually, that will allow you to learn to consciously make your breath unconscious in the desired aspect. The aspect of your body composition, most people are now aware that the water makes up the greatest proportion of our body, more so than, so for all intents and purposes, we are a bag of water. Men are about 60% water. Women are about between 55% water. Babies are about 80% water. So I usually say they're just like a big water balloon with some skin over top of them when they get born. Even though, well, it looks like they're not all water, but they certainly are. So how do we, why is water so important? It's because water has functions in all our 12 organ systems that are critical for wellness and optimal performance. It does everything. Every single aspect of your body requires water. There's the aspect of, when you look at the different percentages, it's everybody seems to have a concern about their brain, cognitive loss, forgetting things, my memory. The number one treatment of memory issue is hydration. And the first sign of dehydration, long before you even get thirsty, is actually brain fog. I can't think as well. My brain doesn't work as well. I go in the other room and it's like, what am I here for? So, and if somebody says, well, if I'm never thirsty, that doesn't mean you're not dehydrated. And so, of course, we have opportunities to be able to measure your actual hydration state, in the clinic, and tell people and show them that even though they don't get thirsty, they actually are quite dehydrated. But look at your other organs that are so highly hydrated. How many times has your cardiologist asked you about, well, are you well hydrated, even though the heart is 78% water? It's usually about what's your cholesterol level, more than anything else. But, we should be asking about the water more than we should be asking about those types of things in general. Even your bones are 25% water. So when you talk about osteoporosis or osteopenia, it's like this, are we talking about, are you well hydrated? And we can look at the aspect of multiple aspects of, the component of, I said, men are about 60, women about 55, and you don't get thirsty until you're about 2 to 3% dehydrated. So mental performance. So if you have a concern, or somebody around you has a mental concern about, they forgetful, mild cognitive decline is the nice way of saying it. We're not talking Alzheimer's to the point of, dementia. We're just talking about everyday performance. And if you have trouble focusing and staying concentrated, it only takes 1% dehydrated to be in that particular state. So the question always is, how much should I drink, per se? A rule of thumb that I have used for many years, for decades actually, is half your body weight in ounces. And there was just an article that came out within the last month, written by a urologist, which I'm going to say this tongue in cheek. He said, there's no study, there's no proof that we actually need the proverbial eight glasses of water a day. And yet, almost on the same day, there was another study that said when you increase the amount of water, you lose weight, your blood sugar is better, your blood pressure is better, you don't have form kidney stones. I mean, there's so many positives by being well hydrated. And so his comment at the end from a straight physiology said, well, you could drink from nothing up to 20 liters. 20 liters is like, are you kidding? We're talking 3 gallons, 4 gallons of water. It's like, doesn't make any sense. So I still believe the rule is half your body weight in ounces, and we're talking water probably that has electrolytes in it or some form of trace minerals, because minerals are certainly a significant problem that people have as far as being able to adequately hydrate themselves. Movement, as you know, the aspect of moving our bodies is not just about improving cardiovascular health, and it's not about necessarily joining the gym. And what's very interesting is about 2 months ago there was research that came out that said incidental movement meaning vacuuming, bending over, picking stuff off the floor, filling your dishwasher, going outside, mowing the grass. I mean, every sweeping the floor, only 1.5 to 4 minutes a day of that activity 7 days a week is enough to significantly improve cardiovascular health. So it's always been, oh, do 30 minutes 3 or 4 times a week. Is that what you need to do? It's theoretically, it's great to do that and make you feel better because start to get endorphin release also. But from a straight physiology perspective, I talk more about what I prefer to call functional fitness. So functional fitness is following the primal movements. Bending, lifting, throwing, pulling, reaching, twisting, and walking are the seven primal movements that ideally, if you incorporate that into your everyday life, called the natural law, will significantly improve your ability, including now that study that just came out that showed that even 1.5 to 4 minutes of that a day will improve cardiovascular wellness and fitness. So when we're talking bending, you deliberately do that. You bend over to tie your shoes. You bend over to, put socks on. You lift something up, and we're not talking, bench pressing. Use the action of throwing, use the action of pulling, or reaching up into the cupboard to get, a cup to make a cup of herbal tea, or twisting your body around. So do you try and incorporate these things into, an everyday activity? And so, what is the idea of functional fitness? Functional fitness is using these seven primal movements that will allow you to reach into old age and still be able to reach into the top cover, to still be able, if you drop $100 bill on the ground, are you going to be able to bend over and pick it up, which is what you want. But, from a practical perspective, in my patient population, one of the greatest challenges are when they don't do this is like, how do I go to the bathroom? Because I don't have anything to support myself to basically get off the toilet. It's like, it's a pretty basic functional need, or pull your pants up, those types of things. And we don't think about it, but this is what happens as people age. So functional fitness is sort of an everyday activity of movement that allows us to um, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. So what I say to a person, so whatever you're doing, at the end of the activity, I want you to stop for 10 minutes, and then I want you to repeat exactly the same activity. And if the person says, "Well, I can't do that," I said, then you're overexpending yourself. You're decreasing your longevity, because what you're doing is you're exceeding physiologic limits, and the body doesn't have the ability to repair. It's like stretching an elastic. You can stretch an elastic, stretch an elastic, stretch an elastic, stretch an elastic, but one time, if you keep stretching it, it's not going to come back. And if you exceed your functional fitness abilities, what you're going to get to one day is your body will not be able to recover. So we like to do some form of muscle contraction, resistance, etc., to add into your everyday. This is still, in my patient population, because of the age of people, is still probably the best activity that there is. And if you have a little dog, like the one that I used to keep this. She literally, I had to carry her every day. That was her walk when I would go for a walk. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us. And another thing that's extremely important, no matter what activity you do from exercise, if you want to call it, I prefer to call it movement, you should always finish by extending the spine. We live in a society that we're mostly in flexion, meaning we're bending forward, whether you're sitting on a chair, whether you're sitting at your computer, working, walking, we tend to be leaning forward. So there's not enough activity where we actually extend our spine. And if you talk to chiropractors, they'll tell you that most injuries are because people are not able to extend their spine and their inflection. So even when you see somebody who has advanced osteoporosis, they're basically hunched forward, which is unfortunate because they're unable to extend for other types of reasons. And if you really want to see the science behind it, I love this 23 and a half hours little YouTube video and he goes through about half. It's about 8 minutes long. In the first 4 minutes, you don't even know what he's talking about, except he's talking about this is a miracle. They should patent this. It's like it's worth billions of dollars. You don't even know what he's talking about. And then he spends the last 4 minutes talking about it's simply just get out and move your body on an everyday basis. We look at the aspect of hydrotherapy, of water. Water is one of the most amazing products. We can use it in ice, the form of ice. We can use it in the form of liquid. We can use it in the form of steam. So we have a whole variety of things. So ending your shower with cool water has been a recommendation I've given for people for many, many years. The system that most people are unaware of and I would say, is responsible or not responsible, is a component of 100% of people's health problems is a congested lymphatic system. It's the system that people, if you have a sore throat, be able to feel lymph nodes here or in the groin area. But as you see, they cover the entire body, including the brain. And this is your sewer system. The lymphatic system is your sewer system. It allows the body to remove most of the elements, we'll say, that we consider detox. People talk about, oh, I have to detox from, we're through the holidays, which is why the 21-day reset is a good time to do this, because it allows us to reset our 12 organ systems. So there's no pump. The only way you move the lymphatic system is by movement, which is why, the area we just talked about. And, we have these lymph nodes, a major, major part of your immune system. You see, we have basically 8 to 12 liters of lymph, which is about 3 times more than the amount of blood that we have in our cardiovascular system. So it is the collecting system, the sewer system, and I will say without question, 100% of people if you have any condition that you end with itis, itis, can guarantee you have a congested lymphatic system. And in fact, if you have if your doctor has given you the name of a condition, whatever it is, I can guarantee you that you have a congested sewer system. And therefore, one of the most important natural laws is how do we move it? So we move it with breathing and moving and castor oil and skin brushing and a chi machine, lymph massage, and machines to be able to do that. Castor oil has been around since the time of Cleopatra that we know about, made famous by Edgar Cayce when he would do seances and that type of thing. He would often tell people that they need to do castor oil packs. And dry skin brushing is also something. My daughter basically has this little video on her website, basically just explaining the simplicity of doing that. You'll learn more about it during the 21-day reset. It has so many positive functions. We could spend a whole hour just talking about why the lymphatic system and why castor oil is such an important part of that. Skin brushing is the opportunity to stimulate it. I would say the biggest error that people make when they do skin brushing, they do it in the shower typically, and they're basically trying to debride thin skin cells. We're not debriding skin cells with this. Is the reason it's called dry, because it's not in the shower. It's dry. I recommend it's being done at bedtime when you take all your clothes off before you get in bed. and you start from the exterior, from the extension, from the limbs, as you see. We're always ultimately moving it to the heart. In general, you see, that you can be very fancy and do it that way, or you can do it the easy way, which is what I have suggested my patients, meaning it only takes 35 or 40 seconds to do. And the key thing, close your eyes. You can use a brush, you can use a sponge. When you touch the skin, it should feel like it's a feather. If it's hard pressure, you're not doing skin brushing, you're debriding dead skin cells. And the reason it has to be light is because we're starting the movement of the lymphatics. The lymphatic system is the most active at nighttime, sort of like when the garbage truck comes around during the night and picks up when there's no cars on the road, type thing. So the same type thing with dry skin brushing. The most effective aspect of that is doing it at nighttime. Grounding versus earthing. This is now a pretty common word. People are much more familiar with it than they ever have been. They're one and the same with just a slight difference. I can't say how important it is that we, unfortunately, because we mostly wear shoes, especially people up, and whether what part of the continent you live on, if you're in wintertime, your likelihood of being bare feet is not very high. In the summertime, you probably are bare feet. You can walk on the beach or whatever. So there is a difference. By definition, earthing means that your skin is in direct contact with the earth. So whether you're lying on the grass or walking on the grass or walking on sand or walking on stone or concrete, whatever, the one thing that you don't want to have in contact or doesn't really create the effect that we're looking for, which is adding electrons, which is why we're doing this, is walking on asphalt. And asphalt, unfortunately, is often made with ground up old tires. So there's rubber in there, so it's an insulator. So it inhibits the electrons basically coming through the material versus virtually any other surface. When we're looking at grounding, grounding is either direct contact with the earth, sand or grass or whatever, but it's also the use of other types of agents. Whether you use a grounding pad on the floor where you're sitting, or whether I'm sitting on one right now, or even have a grounding from a pillow cover. I have it on the bed as a grounding mat. I have it as a pillowcase. I have it as a grounding seat, as you see from those pictures. So some way or another, you need to ground yourself, and you need to ground yourself on an everyday basis. That is a really important natural law. Nebulizing is, by definition, not a natural law, but I started using it during COVID, because of the fact of how are we going to support people to feel better. And I got so many positive responses that were not expected, not just because somebody had a cold or a flu, but because it is helpful to move your lymphatics. And now that we know that the lymphatic system is in the brain, and we need it, and with enough neurological problems that people will having, and whether we're talking anxiety or depression or MS or ALS or whatever it is, this is one of the best ways to get medicine across the blood-brain barrier into the brain. Obviously, it helps the respiratory system. It's a very quick way of being able to nebulize. So we will nebulize with a mask. Versus the oral one. If someone has asthma, they may be used to using a nebulizer. That's an oral delivery, but I'm recommending the mask. So we get it both oral and nasal. And besides putting saline in there and some glutathione, I put a whole bunch of different types of medications, depending on what the individual situation is for an individual patient. So there's many ways that we can treat a whole variety of different problems that are going on. It's no surprise that people will be familiar with the fact that, because how many tens of thousands of studies have been done, how much sleep are you getting? And the misnomer is that people think that they can get by with 4 to 5 hours of sleep. Said I feel fine. I go to bed late for whatever reason. I get up early for whatever reason. And the the grand total of amount of sleep that they get is only ending 4 or 5 hours. And they say, I do fine. Well, how do you do fine? Well, maybe they're drinking, 2 cups of coffee to start the day, or they stop at Starbucks or whatever, and or they have it at noon hour, etc. So, or they use some other form of stimulant, and then at the end of the day, they have to use some form of a sedative. Whether it's a glass of wine or a gummy or whatever to wind down. It's because their physiology is actually not in balance. And when you don't sleep enough, what you're doing is you're missing the opportunity to repair because, as I said, the lymphatic system is the most active during the night. And if you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours versus the ideal between 7 and 8 hours a day, you're missing a huge opportunity for the body to repair itself. There's a reason when you get ill that you sleep a lot. There's a reason after surgery that you sleep a lot and are tired. It's called repair. It's my body is repairing itself, and you only do that when you remove most of the external influences that somebody has. The goal is to sleep in total darkness, and depending on your bedroom, whether you have a windows or you can't make it totally dark, using a mask is necessary. And if you have to get up to go to the bathroom, hopefully you don't have to turn on a light because what we're doing then is we're disrupting the natural circadian rhythm, we're disrupting hormone levels, we're disrupting cortisol levels, we're disrupting melatonin levels, et cetera, et cetera. So, and the goal is to get Wi-Fi out of the room. So, people will use their phone or whatever. Ideally, you would prefer to have all those kinds of things outside the room because we know that EMFs have a pretty significant impact, unfortunately, on our physiology. And since we're around it, then the 16 plus hours a day that we're awake, if we can get away from it for at least a third of the time, when we spend a third of our life sleeping, the goal is how do we minimize any of these outside influences. So those types of things are definitely preferred. And you see the preferred time to go to bed ideally is between 10 and 10:30. And that the main reason for that is because it mimics your own natural hormone cycling. The only time that there should be some aspect of light is around the full moon, when the full moon is bright. And so anyone who has a dysregulated menstrual cycle, the time to have a nightlight on is the day before, the day of, and the day after ovulation, to try and stimulate the natural rhythm that the moon cycle basically is providing us with. But otherwise, we're sleeping in the dark the rest of the day. The other thing about sleep that people are always curious about, why do you do that, is we raise the head of the bed ideally 2 to 4 inches. And what's interesting about that is that it actually improves circulation into your head. People think, oh, aren't you supposed to raise your feet if you're trying to increase circulation to your head? No, what we're talking about is actually all the electrons and all the activity that's going on during the night in repairing tissue. And you will find that if somebody has literally any type of congestion, I'll say from their waist up, whether it's in your chest, your throat, your sinus, your ears, or your head, raising the head of the bed is a very simple tool. Sometimes your bed is not capable of being able to do that, but if it can, I highly recommend that you raise it. It's rare that a person has never heard of meditation, and it's a great opportunity and whether you close your eyes, you don't have to lie down. You can actually be sitting in your chair wherever you're doing. You don't have to do it for 20 minutes. You're doing it like with deep breathing, whether you do it 1 minute every hour or 5 minutes twice a day. Just try and find time within as a natural law and within the 21-day reset. So here's the overview of all the things that I've just talked about and the things that you're going to hear about individually and in details over the next 21 days, plus obviously more. And just a couple of notes about food. These are just general rules, of what we're doing as far as the summary is concerned. And there's so many different types of diets. The only thing we seem to hear about lately is have people on Ozempic and for weight loss, and it's really too bad that it's come to that. That people don't realize that the food that you choose to eat and the activity that you used to do, and said if you drink water, if you follow the natural laws without changing anything of your diet, whether it's the ideal or not. And what's the ideal diet? The ideal diet is the diet for your temperament, which is a whole other discussion, which is, there's specific foods that your body does the best with. And the more you pay attention to those foods, the more that you'll know which of the foods that they are. What we're mostly looking at are basic rules for eating. I like to sort of get the digestive system starting, whether you use some apple cider vinegar or a little bit of fresh lemon and some water before meals. We're trying to retrain the body that food is coming. And so you're smelling the food, you're thinking about the food, you're chewing a lot, you're putting the fork. And what's interesting, if people, if somebody puts their fork down between each bite and you eat the same volume of food, you'll lose 3 or 4 pounds because you will stop eating sooner because the reaction, the feedback from your digestive system back up to your brain will shut it off and say, you're full. You don't need to eat anymore. We don't drink with meals. We don't drink anything cold because it just totally decreases our ability to digest food. Give thanks, eat in a peaceful place, and afterwards, so afterwards we should follow the role of the English, where after you're finished eating is when you should get up, go and turn the kettle on, and heat up some water to have some herbal tea, as opposed to be drinking throughout the meal for what's going on. That's just the aspects of the apple cider vinegar with the mother in there, the organic apple cider vinegar. So there, what's the best diet for any one individual? I can't tell you the best diet because that is between you and your physician or you and your healthcare practitioner who basically, has a better handle on whatever your health challenges are. But the healthy choices, the most important aspects are lots of colors and lots of and probiotic foods. Probiotics now are sort of a household word. What's interesting, when I started medicine, people said, "What's a probiotic?" Even though they've been around since 1911, believe it or not. So over 110 years and 114 years, probiotics have been known about our microbiome. So they're not just in our digestive system. We have 2 to 4 pounds of bacteria in our digestive system, as well as in our lungs and on our skin and everywhere else. And we live in a symbiotic relationship with it because they're essential for life. And so what they find in the blue zones is some of the diet has natural forms of probiotics. And so whether you eat a fermented food, all those blue zones and all the areas of the world that were studied by Weston Price back in the 19 teens basically found that even the Aborigines in Australia or the people in the outbacks of Ireland before Western civilization showed up always ate a fermented food because it was a way to keep supplying the body with different types of foods. These are prebiotics, which are foods basically which provide nutrients to allow the probiotics to grow and to flourish, and that have many purposes within our entire digestive system. We have many of these are the probiotic foods, and so the goal is that you include these foods on a regular basis in your diet in general. And now, of course, we have the ability to purchase probiotics in a capsule or a powder form that you can add into your foods also. But ideally, the more you can get it from your diet, the better it is. So one of the things that the research has shown, this is not new anymore. This was 2017. So what's that? 8 years ago already. It always used to be, eat different 5 colors, eat for the colors of it used to be 3 foods, 5 foods, and the colors of the rainbows. And then in the study that came out in 2017, basically saying the ideal is to eat as many different colors as possible of fruits and vegetables. Ideally, 10 is the goal. And what the research found that when the more people ate, the more foods, the colors that people ate, you see, 24% reduce of heart disease, stroke, cardiovascular, cancer, 21% reduction in dying prematurely. And just think if we could somehow educate the world, educate children, educate in schools that the more colors that you eat, the less the healthcare cost will be, because we know that 90% of healthcare costs are usually spent in the last 5 years of a person's life. which is really unfortunate. Where we really need to be spending it is we need to be spending 90% in the first part of life, and then the people will be like the Queen, who at 98 or whatever she was, and the Queen's mom at 101, who just went to sleep one day and didn't wake up, per se. So that's the brief overview of what you're going to be hearing about in the next 21 days. I highly encourage you, the email that you'll be getting each day in your inbox. Look it over. There's a variety of things you'll get. Resonate more. It'll, if you're uncertain with any of the things we just talked about, you'll get a little more details. You'll get resources. You'll find places to be able to find more information. And what I hope at the end of the 21 days, it doesn't end at 21 days. It actually is the beginning. It's the beginning of it starting to incorporate some of these things into everyday life, into things that you're doing, but now you're doing it with a specific purpose. And the longer you do it, I generally find that if somebody is doing something for about a 3 month period, it's not like none of this takes time, because the reality is you're already doing it. I shouldn't say that. A castor oil pack and nebulizer, if you do them together, will take you 25 minutes, but everything else can be just incorporated into what it is that you're doing, from a day-to-day perspective. You already eat, you already drink, you already go to bed, hopefully you already move, et cetera, et cetera. So now we're just doing it with purpose, because we have a purpose that it's very specific about why, what it is that we're doing. So, whew, good. We have a few minutes. I was speed talking.
Yeah, woo! Awesome. No, that's terrific. Thank you so much, Dr. Thom. I'm going to have head over into the chat and look at some of these questions. I have one question in here about the incline of the bed, lifting the head, or the head of the bed itself. Does propping one's head up on a pillow, if we can't raise the entire bed, does propping oneself up on a pillow do anything?
Uh, I won't say it does nothing, but one of the problems with doing that is actually you're flexing your neck, and you may be decreasing the ability for circulation, because what we want to do is I prefer to actually extend your head, which actually will allow blood to more easily flow, and the lymph system to be more active. So I realize that that's the way some people do it, but if you're going to elevate it, the preferred is to try and elevate it all the way from the waist to include your back and neck, not just your head.
Cool. All right. Another question coming in. What suggestions? You have a suggestion as to where or what we look for. Let me start that over. Any suggestions as to what to look for to avoid in different types of nebulizers? So that question has to do with nebulizers and anything we want to avoid in different types. That's part one. And there's another part, suggestions or recipes for different types of things to add to the saline. And I'll say saline for the water.
So nebulizer, it's sort of six of one, half dozen of the other. They're not that expensive. You can probably find something on Amazon or that costs you $40 or $50. It's a little box that plugs in. You need a mask. There's nothing other to look for. Saline and glutathione are the two standbys, and there's a specific brand that I use. It's from Theranaturals because it's a powder. If your doctor, basically, if you can get a liquid, which we do in the clinic, you can put actual liquid, but you have to buy it in vials, and often you have to be in a medical practice to get it. So it's just easier from that one company. And the reason I use that one company is because it instantly dissolves. You put it in the saline and it instantly dissolves, and it doesn't irritate the lung because they're using a buffered form of doing it. The other things that go in there are very individual. I can't give you a specific recommendation because what's encouraged is depending on what it is that we're trying to do. If I'm trying to encourage somebody's lymphatic system, I'll use a remedy that is more for the lymphatics that's going on. Iteres is a specific brand. There are other companies that sell things. I'll use different types of energetic therapies. Whether you put a flower essence in there, whether you put a phytoembryotherapy in there, and they're always liquids, with the exception of the glutathione. Are there any contraindications? I personally haven't found any. I've not had any patient have an adverse reaction if they're using the only adverse reaction is using a non-buffered glutathione, where some people will it'll find that it irritates their lung. So, but the buffered one, I've not found that to be an issue. And any other remedies that we put in there, specifically whether we're talking for sinus or nose or head or high blood pressure or ear congestion or memory, I have a whole variety of different substances that will be specific to that individual.
Okay. All right. What about the question about red light spectrum? And I don't know if there's a specific question about it, but it was about what sort of red light spectrum, far,
So,
near.
so red light now is very common therapy that's used, and and the most important thing about red light is the number of hertz of the red light, and the higher the hertz, the more likely. So when you go to a dermatologist or an esthetician, and they're using some type of a red light laser, it's only penetrating about 2 millimeters into the skin. So it's for a skin problem, but you need a different type of a unit that has a higher frequency and hertz ability that will penetrate deeper. So, for example, if we're stimulating the brain with a red light helmet, we'll say you need one that has the ability to go through the scalp and go through the bone itself into the brain. So, uh, are there different units? Yeah. Are they great for inflammation? 100%. And so if you have a sore knee and put red light on it and some type of a wrap, people wearing them on their wrist. I probably have 5 different types of red light devices in my house here, per se. It's really about the frequency. The higher the frequency, the higher the hertz, the more it's going to penetrate deeper into the skin. That's really what's the deciding factor. If you just want it for the skin, you'll take the most superficial one because you only need to go a couple millimeters.
So I guess my
Mm.
question was for outside when you're in the actual outdoors, the red light spectrum is what, at sunset or first light?
Oh,
It's
well,
sunlight sunset, but I don't know if it's like first light
yeah,
or right at
uh,
sunset.
that's a good question, but I don't know. I just know that we don't want to be in the sun between 10 and 2 because that's the the highest amount of radiation that ultimately you're getting. So I don't know the answer to that. Sorry.
Mm. I'll see what I can find out for you there. No worries. Um, all right. Fiona asked, would time spent barefoot on a yoga mat be considered earthing for the electrons required, or is direct contact required? Because yoga mats are made with rubber products sometimes. For example, if doing yoga outside on your yoga mat, is it better to remove the mat and then practice directly on the ground?
As much as possible, the preferred is to be in direct contact with the ground. So if there's rubber in the mat, I would say no, that's not a good idea. You're better to do it directly on the ground, directly in direct contact.
They also make grounding yoga mats, which I
Then
have
that's
seen.
okay. Then
You can
that
do that
would be an
indoors.
option. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you can do it indoors and outdoors then. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I have a grounding mat that I'm actually using right now. It's just underneath my hands that I use in the winter, so my feet don't get cold, but I use it in the summer. I'm standing on it. So yeah, all kinds of wonderful, wonderful tips and tricks here. Um, let's see. I also had a question about castor oil. What do we need to look for when we're purchasing castor oil?
There's no such thing as organic castor oil. So, in my opinion, you buy wherever you get castor oil, buy castor oil. There's not going to be a huge difference, probably on some aspect, but for what we're using it for and how we're using it, I don't get too excited about, oh, this person says it's organic. In reality, how it's produced, it, it it's stretching the definition of being organic. We're not ingesting the stuff. In fact, that's the only place you never put castor oil. You never swallow it. Don't put it inside your body. You use it anywhere on the outside of your body, including, in your eye, if you're so brave to do it. For dry eye, it's one of the best treatments there is, in generally. But by no means do you ingest it. It's a wicked purgative. It will make you throw up. It'll cause wicked diarrhea, a lot of cramping. It's the only clinical use, and I believe it's still used sometimes by midwives in an attempt to initiate labor, which to me is just brutal. I think a woman's about to go into labor to have a baby, and you cramp her abdomen by giving her castor oil. That's not fair.
Okay, good to know. I did have something I wanted to say. Yeah.
To be clear.
What about
Yeah.
if the castor oil is in plastic bottles or glass bottles?
Some people will say that that's an issue, and plastic in general is a huge problem because we're exposed to microplastics now, and now they've actually recently I read a study that it's in the brain, it's everywhere, it's actually in every organ. So, if that's your only exposure, but I would say people are getting a hell of a lot more exposure from drinking water out of a plastic bottle. Everything comes in plastic now. So as much as you can, you're obviously trying to minimize that exposure. So yeah, I would say, if you could get it in a glass bottle, that would be preferred. But the minimum amount that you're going to get from using, 6 or 7 tablespoons, and the castor oil bottle is going to last you a considerable period of time, is pretty minimal. Plus the effect of why we're doing the castor oil to improve your emunctories actually will easily negate the little bit of plastic from that aspect per se. Obviously, glass would be better if you can get it.
Did you have a comment, Liz Wiley?
My comment was just that midwives do not use castor oil internally anymore. That is definitely frowned upon all across the board.
It's interesting because it's probably within the last 6 months. So it may be not agreed to, but it still has been used, is what I can say.
Yeah, I bet, I'm sure some people do. I know my sister, like 30 years ago, used it, and I thought, oh my God, I will never do that. And then since then, I have seen that it is, poo-pooed upon, but I'm sure there are some people that do it.
Yeah, I can assure you that there is.
The world.
Mm-hmm.
My sister was given castor oil when her contractions were not productive enough. She was given castor oil to drink in the hospital. So
wow,
that's in Europe. She's still alive.
Still,
she just has little T trauma now.
that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, awesome. So great. I'm looking over here. We've cleaned up all of those questions that came through in the chat, which one was great because it sparked a few more. So I just want to bring this all full circle to everyone here and welcome you to the 21-day reset. These are the common wisdom, but not common practice. I mean, a lot of these we already kind of know inherently, but we're not maybe incorporating them on a regular basis or making them part of our everyday life. As Dr. Thom said, these are things that we can start to do. And again, we're not here to do them all at once. We're here to filter them out throughout the year, pick up one that resonates with you. In fact, if you're interested in learning a lot more about mindfulness or meditation and how to meditate, you want to start practicing meditation, we are going to be running an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction course starting March the 5th. So maybe I'll have it dropped into the chat in a moment so you can learn more about that. But all throughout the next 21 days, our focus is on information that's easy to do, easy to incorporate, and can be useful for the rest of the year in 2025. So I want to say thank you to Dr. Thom, and anything else we want to announce, we'll do that in our emails forthcoming.